I personally think that the biggest challenge in this business, when we're talking about rent to serviced accommodation specifically, is finding the properties. I think finding the properties is tough. I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think it's emphasized enough. There are a lot of people doing it. What me and Pooh have said on this channel and throughout all the trainings that we're going to put out, we don't want to just dress this thing up as all bells and whistles and, rainbows and butterflies. There are some hard points to this business. So how did you go out and find these properties? What's your kind of your best thoughts around that? Where do you begin?
Well, I mean, the first thing, I mean, you hear it, a lot of people say it, but basically just tell everyone what you do. Just sing about what you do, because no one's going to know about you if you're not telling them, basically. Tell everyone what you do, go networking, get to property events. You've got to meet the landlords to get the properties, so put yourself where the landlords are. And literally, the marketing is the biggest thing, and I got, majority of my properties have probably come through word of mouth. I've tried the marketing, tried the leaflets, but the issue, and I agree with you very much, Alex, the getting the properties is exceptionally difficult, because whenever, it's crazy. I mean, I'm a landlord myself. I've got some commercial lets and HMO and single lets. And when you explain the benefits to landlords of what we do and try and take it on as a company let, they get really nervous and think it's some sort of scam. And that's the hardest.
Too good to be true, right? Too good to be true for them.
Yeah.
That's why they think it's a scam.
Yeah, and they think that, ironically, oh no, I'm not putting a company in there because I'm not going to get paid and this, that, and everything. And you're like, hang on a minute, if you put a tenant in there who doesn't pay, you're going to have a much harder job evicting them than you are evicting us if it was to go wrong. We're a company. We've got no rights in the property as a under an AST, under the Housing Act. So, if it was to go south or it wasn't going right for you guys, you can just ask us to leave and
terminate.
We can terminate it pretty much a lot easier than a normal AST. Yet they don't see that, and you're like, they moan about tenants, and all they see is the monthly amount.
Darren, do you find that like a lot of landlords are worrying about like you're going to make a lot more money than them? Have you come across that one?
Yes, 100%.
And is that like quite a main concern, that they would not give out the property to you because they worry so much that how much you're going to make on top of them?
Yeah, they see the revenue figure. Like I say, if I roll back to that 11.5 grand month I had, I paid the landlord 2,600. Bills were lots, £500. I had to pay the cleaners and the marketing costs. So, on top of that 2.5 grand, this is what the landlords don't see.
No.
Is we have a lot more expenses. My expenses that month were probably, excluding the rent, were probably about 3.5 grand, which sounds a lot. But then, like I say, you look at the revenue, the revenue counteracts it. But as the revenue goes up, we're going to incur more costs, because the likes of Booking.com and Airbnb, which everyone understands, is they take a 15 to 20% commission. Sometimes more if you choose.
Yeah.
So the landlords just see the revenue figure and don't realise that you've got to pay cleaners and bits and pieces like that. I actually had a landlord who I had a management deal with, so I was basically paying him a profit share of what I managed it for him. But when I detailed all the revenue and everything to him, he thought he was paying for the cleaning. He didn't quite understand how the model worked, and I think that's quite a common objection with landlords, is they're like, oh, well, you're getting 7-8 grand a month for it, so why are you only paying me?
Would you break that kind of conversation to tell them in advance about this? Like, this is how much I'm gonna make in the property. I mean, or when you approach the landlord for the first time, and would you have those kind of conversation, or you just?
No, I wouldn't share. I wouldn't share the revenue I'm making with the landlord for that very reason. I would just explain the benefits of what we do. And like I say, we're not tenants under the normal sort of tenancy agreement. We look after the place. We're in and out there. My cleaners are in there a minimum of every 2 weeks. So, the house is kept in tip-top condition, basically.
Yeah.
But they it's old school thinking because I mean, let's be honest, majority of landlords are sort of in their later years, and traditionally they've only been doing buy to lets, single
Yes.
lets.
Why do you think? Um, what is it that you think makes landlords trust residential AST contracts more than working with you as a business? I mean, I come up against the same barriers all the time, you know, speaking to agents and even landlords directly, and they say, you know, we just want to have a family in the property. And even though you explain the benefits and the fact that, you know, those tenants are not going to care for your property like we will, because for them it's a stopgap, it's a temporary solution. They're looking to buy a home or they're looking to move on. For them it's temporary. For us, we need to make money from this property, so it needs to be a show home all the time. But still, it's hard to kind of get that into their heads. And it's almost comes down to trust, I think. But it's trying to understand why is that? You know, what is it that they don't trust about us? I think that's the key.
Yeah,
What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, it is like you say, it's a bugbear of what this business is just getting the properties. Um, I think it's almost like when you try and change banks, you can't be bothered with the hassle, so they know that a traditional single let buy to let works, and they're not used to like the minute we start saying. I think their biggest fear is a lot of people coming through the house, whereas they like to know, oh no, I just like to know there's a family in there. And even though we explain that, you know, that basically they're not, if they're misbehaving or damaging the property, we can basically call the police because they're trespassing because they've broken our terms and conditions. I think they get very emotional about their properties, and that I think is the biggest hang up for a lot of them. Even my very own family included, my sister just doesn't do it, and it in my head it's a box. It's just a box that generates you money. I'm not personal about none of my properties because it's like, you know, it's just a vehicle that's going to make me
Yeah.
money. And at the
Yes.
end of the day, you know, what's the worst that's really going to happen? I mean, a tenant or a guest, you know, they're not, unless they're sort of, you know, I don't know, I mean, obviously we avoid having parties, but, you know, unless they're sort of swinging a chainsaw around the place for sort of 7 hours, you know, what sort of damage are they going to do? There might be, they might break a door handle or pull a door off the hinge or, you know, smash a hole in the wall. But in all reality, you know, if I'm making £1,000 a property per month and I've got a sort of three, four, £500 repair, get a plaster in there to repair a little hole in the wall, it's nothing.